I've been in my hometown in Italy for a week and I came with a new camera, which is so exciting and perfect timing really. And I'm excited to show you some of the pictures I took with my new X-H2 and share my first impressions. I've had the Fujifilm X-H2 for almost a month now, and I've been using it on photography jobs, for everyday shooting, and I took it to this trip to Italy. These are just my first impressions, so I might change my mind in the future and you might see things differently too, and that's okay. That's part of what makes this fun. Little disclaimer, I still think that all the Fujifilm cameras like the X-T4, the X-T3, the X-T30 are still incredible cameras, and if this wasn't my job, I probably wouldn't have bought a new camera. My previous workhorse camera that I used for pretty much everything was the Fujifilm X-T4. I absolutely loved that camera, but it had its limitations. It didn't perform great in low light, and video-wise, it wasn't as good as my boyfriend's Sony camera that I often borrowed to film these videos. I knew I wanted to upgrade, but when it came to choose a new camera, I was honestly torn. And I might say something that might annoy a few people, but I'm actually not a fan of the X-T5. I mean, it sounds great on paper, but it lacks a few features that I really need, like the rotating screen for video. I got the chance to try GFX a couple of months ago in a photography show in London, and I was so surprised to see how big they actually are in real life. Definitely not a travel-friendly camera like a Contax T2, for example. I compared them to a Mamiya B6-7. They're incredible cameras, but I believe they're more suited for studio work. And I'm not a studio photographer, so that wasn't gonna work out. And you could say to me, Lisa, you could get a Nikon Z, you can get a Sony camera. The answer is simple, I'm a Taurus. I'm loyal, and I wanted to stick with Fujifilm. But jokes aside, I just couldn't be bothered to change my lenses, buy new lenses, and I didn't want to learn how to edit a different RAW file. And whenever I've tried to edit Sony RAW files, I wanted to cry a little bit, so I wasn't gonna do that. Back to the Italy trip I mentioned, I visited the Brion Memorial, which might look familiar if you have seen Dune Part 2. It's this beautiful modernist architectural site designed by one of the greatest Italian architects, Carlo Scarpa. I've got to say, I'm a bit disappointed with the build quality of the camera. I knew this going in, and I already had a little rant about it on a YouTube community post. When I went to that photography show, I was really surprised to see how a lot of new cameras that have been released in the last few years just feel quite plasticky and cheap. It's something that I definitely want to explore more in the future, maybe in a dedicated YouTube video, in a newsletter, and a blog post. But for today, I would say that I've noticed a drop in quality in the X-H2 compared to the X-T4. With the X-H2, we say goodbye to the dials that Fujifilm is known for, and we're stepping into more of a pro territory. The whole thing feels like a shift from the X-T line to something a bit more focused, a bit more serious, and definitely more about efficiency. Image quality was part of the reason why I went for the X-H2. The 40 megapixels give you loads of detail, which is great if you like to crop or if you need to print large. Even though it's a relatively small jump from the 26 megapixels I was used to, it's a difference I noticed. I can push my ISO a tiny bit more now and I still can keep my grain under control. When I was researching the X-H2 compared to the X-H2S, the general opinion was that the X-H2S autofocus was better. I can't really comment on that since I haven't tried both cameras side by side, but what I can say is that the X-H2 autofocus is actually great, and it's definitely a big improvement from the X-T4. Especially in video mode, sometimes the X-T4 would just miss my face or just randomly go out of focus, while with the X-H2 is definitely more reliable and consistent. The LCD is a small but noticeable upgrade from the X-T4. It's a bit sharper, colors look more accurate, and overall it just feels more responsive. The resolution is better, which makes reviewing images and checking focus a bit easier. Nothing groundbreaking, but it's one of those little quality of life improvements that you definitely notice. At the end of the day, I'm just a chill girl. I wanted a workhorse camera that could do everything that I needed, and that felt like a real upgrade from the X-T4. And for me, it delivered. Obviously, it's not just about gear, and that's why I don't upgrade my camera every year, and I always end up using the same two lenses. But at the same time, a good camera and a good lens do make our life easy. And that's why when people with very expensive, fancy cameras say that gear doesn't matter, I'm always a bit skeptical. It's easy to say that when you have a camera that doesn't break, that's reliable, and that handles all the technical stuff for you, you're left just to focus on the creative side of photography. Even though the X-H2 isn't some life-changing upgrade from the X-T4, the menu flow and overall feel of the camera is just quicker and smoother. And honestly, as someone who doesn't handle change that well, that's kind of comforting. I bought this camera in like new condition from MPB for around £1,300. If I can, I always try to be sustainable when it comes to buying tech and buy gear secondhand. For the condition it was and what this camera offers, I think that's a really solid price, especially considering how new cameras keep getting more expensive while build quality seems to be going the other way. When I'm talking about gear here on YouTube, I always ask myself, so who is this for? In this case, I would think that this camera might be a bit of an overkill for a hobbyist photographer, mainly for its size and weight. It's definitely not a camera you can just chuck in your bag and go. I still haven't figured out what my ideal digital travel camera is, but that's something I'll be exploring on the channel too. That said, so far the X-H2 feels like a solid investment for my photography career, and I'm excited to see what I end up shooting next. And that's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. As usual, please leave a like, subscribe, because it really helps my small channel, and I'll see you next week.